Good morning. I'm John Ittelson from California State University, Monterey Bay. For those of you who were here earlier when somebody talked about the husband who used the iPhone, my wife who's asking the questions, I was the one that she was complaining about. Somehow, I'm not sure an former FCC commissioner is going to change me, but we'll try. As a college professor, the worst hour was that hour before lunch. As a senior professor, I thought I never had to have that slot again, but Ginny gave me an opportunity to be your pre-lunch at least introduction. To make sure that we entertained you, though, we decided to give what I think is one of the most exciting sessions that you'll see today, the high-tech backpack. I think, any of you carry this around during your educational experience? Yeah. One of the most interesting blogs I saw here was a set of reporters talking about what they were bringing in their backpacks to live through CES. I'd probably be more interested in what they take away from CES. On our campus, we introduced a number of projects with electronic textbooks, and there were a number of students. I said, "Isn't this great? You're not going to have to carry around that heavy backpack." A few days later, I saw them in the hall still with their heavy backpacks. And I said, what happened? I thought we were going to get rid of the backpacks. He says, "Oh, no, it's great, John. We now have our Frisbee golf materials and Red Bull." So without further ado, though, let's get started. We have three presenters today. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to have each panelist present about what their invention or innovation is and how that relates to our high-tech backpack. And hopefully we'll have a couple minutes before we need to break for lunch. And we will get you to lunch, maybe not exactly on time, but pretty close. So you have the bios in your program, so I'm not going to do a lot of details. I'm just going to say that I'm glad that James is here speaking, and as a undergraduate from California, and we won't blame you for going to Texas for your doctorate, but you're going to talk about what you're doing with Sapling learning.
Well, thank you very much. Today what I'd like to talk to you about is the digital backpack for students who are in the STEM disciplines, the science, technologies, engineering, and math disciplines. And obviously, there's been a tremendous drive towards digital, and this has largely been, in the eyes of students, for the sake of cost and convenience. The new tablets, the new e-readers, they're tired of carrying around very heavy, overpriced textbooks that break both their banks and the seams of their backpacks. And so obviously, most of you are familiar with that drive for technology, but in the STEM disciplines in particular, I want to talk about that there's much more of an opportunity for technology to help students in those disciplines. And it comes down to the fact that science classes, physics classes, chemistry classes, quantum mechanics, whatever, those classes are just plain hard. They're hard. Students have to learn how to speak a different language with new symbols. They have to develop incredible quantitative skills, and also deal with some pretty esoteric and concepts and be able to visualize things very well. And the fact that this is hard, a number of studies, one at Wake Forest University, has looked at the kind of grades that are given out to their students, and what they're finding is that students in their science classes are receiving, on average, half a letter grade lower than students and their peers in the softer disciplines, such as English or sociology. And so there's not a tremendous incentive for a student from a GPA standpoint to continue in those disciplines, given that those classes are hard and require a lot of work. And so we see that there's 40%, student in a science major is 40% more likely to change their major than any other type of major. And so retention is a key issue that I'll talk about in just a second. But if you give that science classes are hard, faculty, especially with their familiarity with technology of these that teach these science courses, they're one of the forerunners of turning towards technology to provide those tools in their students' digital backpacks to make them successful. Now, if you're providing tools to a student to help make them successful, number one, they have to provide relevance. And this is a challenge in providing technology, especially software such as online homework software for students, where they need to speak with the symbolism and nomenclature of their discipline. So students in physics need to be able to draw free body diagrams because they're going to be expected to do that on their final exam. They need to be able to enter chemical and mathematics equations, conduct virtual experiments, draw molecules and reaction mechanisms, and all those things that they're going to have to do to perform on their exam. And so that's a challenge to build those learning environments that provide those rich interactions and the relevance and allow those students to communicate with the system just like they would communicate to their professor their knowledge through an exam situation. However, once you surmount that challenge, and my company, Sapling Learning, we're kind of at the forefront of providing that kind of relevance. When we started in this game, we decided to tackle organic chemistry first. We figured if we could, in an online learning environment, have students drawing reaction mechanisms and all the molecules involved, then we could tackle almost anything. And so once we satisfied that challenge that we could provide that relevance, now we started to look for opportunities. How can we use technologies to give these students the help that they need? And one of the tremendous advantages of online homework systems, of which my company builds, is that they're engaging. And a lot of times we toss around the term engagement in terms of educational technology as flash, really nice media, engaging videos. But actually, online homework systems, which are the primary technology product in the STEM disciplines, we hold the holy grail of engagement. Students, 15% of their total course grade is conducting and engaging with the online learning system every week. And so when you make it worth points, nothing's more engaging to a student than that. And so we've got engagement tackled, and these digital tools, the benefit that they provide is coaching and feedback. And a lot of the early online homework systems were merely assessment engines, and you get about a half a grade performance increase with students just for holding them accountable to engaging with the class once a week. So the initial online homework systems were largely quizzing engines. And again, my company's been on the forefront of changing how that engagement with the student to include a lot of coaching and feedback that's tailored to the specific misconceptions that students have. Students love the immediacy of the feedback. They love that we can give them tutorials, much like a tutor sitting side by side saying, look, I'm going to walk through helping you solve this problem. I know exactly what you did wrong. And students really benefit from that level of coaching. And that coaching is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And no tutor or TA or instructor office hours can match that availability. The other thing, and you can't discount this at all, I think maybe perhaps it's one of the most important things, is that computer learning interfaces in general are very approachable when you compare that to not knowing how to succeed in physics and going and visiting your professor in his office hours while he's got a grant due the next day. It's very intimidating. Computer learning environments, they don't judge, they offer their coaching and feedback unconditionally, and they won't think less of you for not understanding the fundamental core basic concepts of the class. So we've talked about the opportunities for digital and how we can help coach students towards success, and the students absolutely get it. I was astounded once we released our system to find that we've done survey after survey after survey, not only us, but independent surveys by our professors. And what they find is that over 90% of students will gladly pay to be forced to do hours of homework every week. That is amazing, transformative, I think. And if you look at, this is a recent study by Butler University where they asked, let's rank and rate 20 elements of a course in terms of contributing towards your success for the class. And in that study, as well as others, online homework ranks #1. The students value it higher than any other element of the course, including the instructor and the lectures themselves. And I think it's interesting to point out that the textbook's #8. So there's a tremendous disparity between the amount of effort that faculty take choosing textbooks for their students and the prices involved with textbooks, when in fact students find them less valuable and they're 4 times the cost. I also want to talk a little bit about outcomes. So the students get this. So the chemistry education researchers and physics education researchers have studied this. And this is a recent study conducted by the Colorado School of Mines. Same professor, same semester, same book. One section using Sapling learning, the other section doing what they did before, which was written homework and weekly Blackboard quizzes. And this goes to show you the value of that coaching and feedback late at night while they're struggling with their problems, in that the section that used Sapling had twice as many A's given out and 50% more B's, with a concomitant reduction in C's, D's, F's, and withdrawals. And again, when we talk about retention and people changing their major, it's those C's, D's, F's, and withdrawals where students say, look, I'm not going to be a scientist, I'm not cut out for it, I'm going to do something else. A lot of faculty also worry that they're giving up something by not hand grading their students' homework. They spend a lot of time doing it, and they feel guilty, and they feel like maybe they're being lazy by offering an online homework system. Expanding class sizes and cut budgets have kind of forced them to face up to this fact. But really, what I love telling them is you're actually doing your students a disservice by spending all that time and effort. Our system will absolutely change the ratio of students getting a C or better versus D's, F's, and withdrawals. And this is another study at the University of North Texas. So you don't have to feel guilty. You're actually doing them all a favor. Spend your time working on your lectures, engaging them in class, maybe working to flip your class a little bit. And I just wanted to finish with the potential for digital learning and talk a little bit about what's at stake. If we have a retention problem here in science, and digital tools can be a powerful component for changing it, we really need to look at promoting these environments within our classrooms and our blended classrooms. And what's at stake, you know, I always look at the Apple devices. I've got every Apple device known to man, including 2 Apple TVs, I'm ashamed to say. But all of them say this one fact: designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. And while we have given a lot of our manufacturing outside of the US, that's very comforting to say that we're graduating engineers, scientists who can contribute to those R&D efforts, and those are being conducted here. But just at the end of last year, just a couple weeks ago, I read an interesting article because I follow Apple, and they don't make too many acquisitions, that they acquired an Israeli flash storage maker. And what really popped out to me is that the last sentence of the article was, for the first time in Apple's history, they're going to move some R&D over outside the US. And so if we want to provide our children with the opportunities here to become scientists and engineers and contribute, we need to do something, and digital is the way to go to help engage them. And what we don't want to see is that things are starting to be designed outside the US, and we want to keep that competency here. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Let's see, I see a few gray beards out there, a few bald heads, but we won't talk about that. How many of you have ever heard of a thing called a Heath kit? Okay, good, so it's not that bad. My first computer was a Heath kit, and I was sort of distressed when that went away because my children didn't have the experience of sort of getting to build one of their own things. And so, Dale, I have to really thank you. Where's Dale for making me cool to my daughter. She thought taking her to Radio Shack was just cruel and unusual punishment. Our next speaker, Dale, is the founder of Make magazine, which officially coined the Web 2.0. But more importantly for me, Makers Faire is an experience that if you haven't had an opportunity to do, you should follow through on. Dale's going to be assisted by Marc, and we're going to turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. How many of you have you heard of Make Magazine? Raise your hand. That's good. How many have been to a Maker Faire? Raise your hand. Ooh, we got to work on this audience. The rest of you, just raise your hand. It's a good thing to do. All right? It's participation. We're passing out another form of participation. We're gonna make you makers. We only have maybe 100 of these, but these are called LED throwies. If you've never built a circuit before, you're going to do one today. We've got in here a battery and an LED, and a magnet and a piece of tape. Figure out various combinations that light the LED, and then you have something that you can throw on a metal surface. Well, didn't quite make it there. But on your way out, you can attach it to the door or any place you like. That's called sharing. And making is about doing stuff and sharing it with other people. Marc is here today, and while you're doing that, we're going to show you some of the technologies that are popular in the Make community. And I kind of want to talk about this idea of kits. The current issue of Make, which is a special issue, is dedicated to kits. Now, some of you may be, say, old enough to know about Heath kits and remember that our first personal computers were built from kits. Even Apple Computer really has its origins in the kit world. And so, what we do with kits is we have a way of building something, in a sense, playing with it afterwards. And we have, hundreds of different kits in here. Everything from a car that you can go into the desert and into a micro factory and build your own race car to, very small things here that Marc is going to demonstrate. But how are we doing on those LED throwies? Look at there. We got in the first row a winner right there. All right. So I'll say this. Lighting an LED is the gateway drug for making, right? So it's that basic sense of power that you have that you did something. You made something happen. And when we talk about this in an educational context, there's words such as the previous speaker talked about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, there's a lot of interest, corporate interest, government interest in getting kids into STEM. There's not a lot of student interest. And that's a problem. John Seeley Brown published a book called The Power of Pull, and he distinguished push and pull. STEM is push. Make is pull. What do you want to make? I want to make a go-kart. I want to make a robot. I want to make a synthesizer. There's lots of things to make, and we'll show you a few examples here today. I want to introduce one of the technologies and that is part of the Make community. And I think it is to the Make community what I think the personal computer was to the first generation of hackers. And this is called a 3D printer. Now, how many of you are familiar with it? Good. So we're going to show you a little bit of a video here from Skylar St. Leger, who's age 10. And he actually gives the best introduction to a 3D printer that's possible. So I wanted to just play his video. What did I do there? There we go. Get away. I just lost it. Do we have sound on this? Yes, we do.
Leonardo da Vinci was a prolific inventor, but one of the challenges he faced was going from a pencil sketch to a working prototype. And that's why you never saw a helicopter in the 15th century. Technology advancements of the 19th century allowed Edison and Bell to bring their ideas to life. On Edison's birthday, I'm here to tell you why I love my 3D printer. 3D printers are a tool that many of today's inventors use. The first 3D printer was invented in 1984 by Charles Hull. Here's how a 3D printer works. You take a plastic filament, push it into a heated nozzle, melt it, extrude it out onto a moving build platform, and this creates your object. Here's how you'd use a 3D printer. You start with a 3D model, which you design in CAD software such as AutoCAD. You turn that model into decode, which are the instructions for your 3D printer. You then print it, and you have your object. I chose a heart to remind everyone that Valentine's Day is in 3 days. But the problem with commercial 3D printers is that they cost too much. With my allowance, it would take me 10 years to be able to afford the cheapest one. What's a young inventor like me to do? Luckily, the open source community saved me with the RepRap, the Replicating Rapid Prototyper. But the problem with the RepRap is it's not very reliable. These 3 people want a more reliable 3D printer, so they created the MakerBot, a low-cost 3D printer that just works. For about $1,000, you can buy your own MakerBot kit. A few key elements of the MakerBot are the extruder head, where your plastic's melted and extruded out, and the build platform, where your object's created. Here's how you'd use a MakerBot. Let's say you drop and break your mother's keychain. Sorry, Mom! You can trace it out, measure it, design a 3D model, print it, and you have a fixed key fob. Look, Mom, I fixed it! And if you aren't good at designing stuff, you can go to Thingiverse, the universe of things. Where anyone can download 3D models to print. In fact, my first thing was a thing from Thingiverse, a whistle. Now, why a whistle? Well, it's easy to print, and when you're done, you have something that annoys your parents. The great thing about 3D printing is that you can print in many colors by swapping out your plastic filament, and in many sizes by scaling your 3D model up or down. But you aren't limited to whistles. You can print a Darth Vader head like you might find at a Star Wars convention. Or you can make your own bobblehead. But one of the amazing things on Thingiverse is the Gothic Cathedral, because it pushes the limits of the MakerBot with its detail and its intricacy. And for all you engineers out there who are wondering, what functional stuff can I make? Well, you can make a nut and a bolt, a ball bearing, and these nerdy glasses.
Okay, I think it gives you a really good, idea of not only just sort of what's interesting to him as a 10-year-old, but his enthusiasm and his ability to present is remarkable. Would you know he's autistic? We see that in the make community, in the tech community, and there's something about making which is a literacy that we don't teach in schools, but when kids get to it, they build their confidence and they build their ability to do things and even get up in front of people and give talks. So, Marc, let's show a few kits that we have in our maker shed and some of the things that are popular here. One thing, I want to give you one way to think about kits. Kits are like the apps of the maker world. They are a package that allows you to play with something really fun. Go on and show the Super Cap Racer, I guess. You want to explain it? Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. No?
Yeah, we'll use this if it's not working.
You want to hold that here?
Yeah.
So once we get our young engineers and our makers learning how to solder, which is another one of our gateway kits. After you make a throwy, you make this little robot that has a blinking LED. Kind of the next step would be to build something like the Super Cap Racer. Here, I'll charge it up. And what's really interesting about this is it teaches a lot about electronics. But most importantly, every single child, including my own 2 daughters that have seen this, not only do they want to build it, but they want to play with it afterwards. And it makes that whole learning experience a really positive event. We have dozens of these running around the house, annoying the dogs and playing with the kids. And after you charge it up for about 10 seconds, you let it go. Oh, there you go. So It's more fun on the floor, but I have it kind of set up so it does circles.
Okay. What else do we have? So let's talk about this. This is the Kitty Twitty project from Make Magazine.
So kind of my maker background, a little bit of a secret is I'm the director of product development. Everyone thinks I'm an engineer or a programmer. And the reality is I'm not an engineer. I'm not a programmer. But with kits like Arduino kits and some of these different electronic kits, I was able to build this little interactive toy that was for my cat. My wife kept calling me every day, how's the cat doing? How's the cat doing? And I didn't want to be that middleman for the cat. So I gave my cat a way to directly communicate with my wife, saying, I'm happy, I'm having fun. So this toy, as the cat plays with it, through a simple microcontroller, actually tweets that he's having fun. Thus eliminating me from the middle, which was perfect.
Okay. So just quickly, because we're about up at our limits here. Marc mentioned Arduino. That's the other. So 3D printers and Arduino are two of the technologies that we think are in the digital backpack or the physical backpack today. But I think it's actually really interesting, and again, it led to me to start Make Magazine, that we're engaging with physical things. We're engaging with the world. We're not just thinking about sitting at a computer, but the computers are connecting us to the world, and the world is connecting us back to computing in interesting ways. So this is, I don't know why you'd want it unless you have 16-year-olds. This is called an open source breathalyzer. So it fits onto a Arduino, and you blow into it, and you can tell if Johnny's been out having a good time. But I want to leave you kind of like with the idea that everything old is new again. You know, making is not something that is necessarily touted here at CES as a brand new thing. It's actually a tradition. It's been around for a long time. Many of you know parents and family members who are tinkerers, who did things. And I think we've lost a sense of that in our culture, and we've certainly moved it to the margins of education. My goal is to reintroduce this back into education, the projects, the excitement, and the confidence that kids can gain from participating in making things. And a big phrase in our community is DIY, or do it yourself. And really, education needs to be more about what do I get to do with what I'm learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to hold questions again to the end. We'll have a chance right at the end for you to ask questions, but I could already see the question about the breathalyzer and your online homework. This next presenter will be talking about a device, a Livescribe pen. And I have to say, this is one that I personally use. I am a certified dyslexic. I do worry at night, is there a dog? But I survived. I got a Ph.D. being a dyslexic through the support group called Untitled. We'll work on that one. It works just as well in my classes, too. But this device really did change my teaching and my interaction with my students. And I use this device to record all my notes with my graduate students. And I would hand them that sheet of paper and then put the pen into my computer, and I had an electronic copy of it. And then as we go through our process of working on their thesis or project, when they would come back to the office, I'd pull up my printed page and we'd be able to go over it. So I was talking to one student and was saying, you know, what was the most successful thing that I did to help you get through your master's project? And I'm not sure this is the word that you want to hear for your thing. He says, it was that damn pin you had. Because I kept track of where they were, what they said, and when they said it. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about Livescribe.
Great. Thank you. Can you all hear me with this microphone? All right. Thanks for that introduction. You know, one of the hardest things we ask our students to do is to take notes. With respect to cognitive load, which is the ability for you to pat your head and rub your tummy and chew gum at the same time, note-taking is one of those things that I see Sarah and Linda in the front row doing, where you're listening to the professor talk, you're thinking and distilling down what they're saying, and then you're writing it, trying to capture it, at the same time listening for the next thing to make sure you don't miss it. And the problem is students are very poor note takers because we don't really train them how to do it very well. They capture what's written on the board, but they really don't write down what the professor is saying or the teacher is saying. And that's where the explanation is, right? That's the mojo of the presentation. So I work with a company called Livescribe, and we developed this new digital pen technology. Actually, I want to back up a little bit and confess something. I just said that one of the hardest things we ask somebody to do is to take notes. I'm going to say the hardest thing for me to do is to juggle 3 computers and a switcher box and an overhead projector here. So let's see if this actually works out well. So this is the pen. And that's not the zoom. That is, though. How many of you, by the way, have heard of the Livescribe Smart Pen? Excellent. So I'm going to move fast then through this because we can get to some kind of the newer features. But basically, this is a digital audio recorder. It captures everything that you hear. It's got a microphone built in. It's got a speaker so you can play it back. It has an audio jack so you can plug in your earphones if you want to listen to things there. It's got a little display that gives you an update on information. And basically, the way it works is you open up a notebook that you would get from Livescribe, and there's a little button at the bottom that says record. When you tap on that button, it records everything that's being said, and it records everything that I write, and it synchronizes the two so that when I come back later and tap in my notes, it plays back the recording from that moment. So if a student's taking an econ class and a professor's talking a mile a minute and they're taking notes as fast as they can, later on they can come back and say, you know, I think I really missed something important. They tap in their notes. So I'm just going to do it. So I tap the record button, and my name is Andy. I'm actually a professor at Vanderbilt University. So I tell people I'm Andy from Vandy. If you want to get hold of me, just Google that and you'll find it. I'm originally from Cupertino. My first job was working for Apple Computer. I do love living in Tennessee right now. All right, so you could imagine that this would be something that you could do as a student, as something you could do as a reporter, as an attorney, as whoever it is. And now when I tap on my notes, I have to do it like this. And the angle's not quite right here. This is the audio cable. I'm actually a professor at Vanderbilt University. And I can jump down here and say I'm from Tennessee. Living in Tennessee right now. Now this could be notes that you took a week ago or a month ago. Students take notes, and then what they do the night before the exam, not surprisingly, is they say, oh, I have to go back and study. And sometimes their notes are cryptic. They wrote some things down, but they don't really remember what it was. They tap in their notes and they listen to it. Now, as a professor, this is what I do for my students. Right before a midterm or a final exam, I'll do a review session. And I talk a little bit faster than I'm talking right now. A mile a minute, I'm going through that review sheet. But as I'm going through the review sheet, I'm making little check marks on it. And I post that to the class, and then they can go back and listen to the review sheet as many times as they want. Think about that. What's the worst thing you could say as a person? You know, I'm only going to tell you this once. Right? But that's what professors and teachers do. They tell it to students once, and they expect them to retain it for some long period of time. So what we really find with the Livescribe Smart Pen is that students are able to go back and listen to it as many times as they want. Right? And so if English is not your first language, if you're dyslexic, if you don't have a lot of subject matter expertise, then you'd want to listen to it multiple times. Now, once you have written something on your piece of paper, you can upload it to your desktop. So this is the Livescribe desktop software. Just a few minutes or this morning, I opened it up and I created a little tutorial on effect size. It's one of my favorite statistics. Effect size basically is when you conduct an experiment, you randomly assign people to 2 conditions. They get something, but not the treatment. These guys get the treatment. You do a pre-test and a post-test, and at the end, you basically know how powerful your intervention is. So how I use this as a professor is I actually post my lecture notes and my little tutorial sessions. So I can actually click on it. And let me plug in the speaker here. This is part of that juggling I promised you that I was going to do.
Of spatial intervention. So suppose we conduct an experiment where we have a control group here.
And I'm just going to jump down to the equation.
Calculate effect size by taking the mean of the experimental group minus the mean of the control group, and we divide it by the standard deviation of the control group. So we're saying how many standard deviations above the mean of the control group is the mean of the experimental group. And in this case, it's probably 1, 2.
So you see, as a professor, I can, to head off office hours, and we know as professors that's one of the difficult things that we do, I can actually post homework solutions. It's not simply the thing that's in the back of the book, but I can actually walk students through a solution by doing this. Now, something that's new, you guys are very familiar with Livescribe. One of the things that I'm not sure that you know what it can do
of x bar sub c, and we have on the post test
is you can actually post these now to the cloud, to the web, or I can drag and drop this onto my computer icon here and actually save it as a PDF file. And by saving it as a PDF file, I mean that if I sent it to one of you in the audience who doesn't have a pen, doesn't have the Livescribe desktop software, but you have Adobe Acrobat Reader, the free reader software, you double click, open it up, and watch that same animation. So I want to show it to you. So you can export as audio, you can export as a PDF file, but I'm going to do it as this Pencast PDF. I'm sending it to the desktop. And it should appear, oh, I have to name it, so I'll just give it that name, that's fine. And there it is. Now when I double click on it and open it up, there it is in Adobe Acrobat Reader. And I get the same animation you saw before.
By taking the mean of the experimental group minus the mean of the control group, and we divide it by the standard deviation of the control group.
Isn't that kind of neat? So we have connectors for Google Docs, Google Sites, Facebook, got to have Facebook, and OneNote, and a number of other connectors. So basically, from your pen, in a very natural way, you take notes. It's the way people work. I was mentioning earlier to John that I think the most effective educational technologies will be the ones that require students and teachers to work the way they always work. We're not asking them to change their behaviors. And then finally, I'll show you one more little connector that we have, and that's for the iPhone. I think I can turn the lamp off because I have it up there. Oh, my beautiful wife and kids. Don't throw that in there. We have a little Pencast player, and there it is. And I can go ahead and tap on it. And we get the same thing, the audio is going. Can you see the contrast doesn't quite work? Sorry about that. You get the idea? You get the idea. So what I want to do with the little bit of time that I have remaining, and it's not much, is talk to you about how people are using this. So certainly for students taking notes, they can capture a complete record of what the lecture was all about. For themselves or for their team. They have team meetings, somebody missed the meeting, they can capture the notes, send it off to their buddies as a PDF file. As an accommodation, we have a lot of students, especially in community colleges, who struggle in the classroom because English isn't their first language, because they have other sorts of learning disabilities. So at UC Berkeley, we're working with them. Basically, they hire a note taker, they sit in the classroom. Instead of the note taker deciding what's important for the other student to know, they record both the audio and the handwritten notes now just serve as an index into the recording. Electronic homework submission, we're working with the University of Virginia, their School of Engineering, great program. They needed electronic inking, they want students to submit their homework electronically. You can actually use this as a profession to provide feedback electronically, I'll talk about that in a second. And then distance ed tutoring. If I had a little bit more time, I'd show you how if I plug my pen into my laptop, it actually becomes like a Wacom graphics tablet. I can actually control my cursor with my pen. So you get a lot of the electronic inking functionality out of a normal laptop computer without having to go to a tablet. For professors, because we don't have backpacks, but we have briefcases, I do post homework solutions for my students. It cuts down on office hours, creates greater clarity. I post office hours solutions. Students come in and talk to me, and it all makes sense in my office. They go off and play Frisbee or whatever they're going to do, and they get back to their dorm room later and can't remember what I said. So I post the solutions for them. I provide feedback to my students. In-class participation, I can draw a little seating chart. While students talk, I put a little check mark next to their name. And then later on, when I have time and a little bit more cognitive load, I can tap on it, listen to what they say, and then run it against my rubric so that when they come in my office, I can give them feedback. In-class presentations, I can listen to the presentation. They hear themselves. They see my handwritten comments. We're using it for teacher classroom observations, school counseling certification, obviously as a research tool. There you have it. So a tool to support limitations in human information processing for both our students and for our professors. Thank you.
So we have three very interesting presentations, from digital pen to our flashing light and kits, and students who actually want to be kept track of in their homework. So we're going to open it up for questions. The audience, the microphone is there. While we're waiting for you to form a question, I'm just going to ask a question in terms of the Livescribe. With the audio that you have there, how do you see students in terms of their different learning styles versus the audio versus writing? Do you see a different sort of note-taking when they know they have the whole transcript?
Yeah,
or
in fact,
they could hear it?
No, that's a great question. One of the things that's challenging for me as a professor is getting students to think in class. Right? What I see is a lot of the tops of their heads as they're writing things down very diligently. They're great transcriptionists. And sometimes I have to ask my students, please put down your pens, trust me on this, because I need you to think a little bit. And what I find with the Livescribe Smart Pen is students can actually take fewer notes, and so you just write down a few key points, and you spend more time thinking and listening, and then that way I can have more interactive dialogue with my students. They're not worried about missing that key thing, because they can always very quickly go back and capture it later.
James, what about the idea of a pen like this and how that might interact with the work that you're doing online?
Well, I plan on talking with him about this after this, but obviously students who struggle with their homework can benefit from seeing worked examples, and you're already doing that in your classrooms. And a lot of professors are now working with us, and they're posting into their courses that they use with Sapling Learning Khan Academy style videos that they're doing with a bamboo tablet or something like this. I actually own a Livescribe pen, and once I found it, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And they have a tremendous environment online where students can post their notes and even invite other students to look at them. And so obviously if students are struggling with the same homework problems, it would be great to integrate a technology like that where students can work through a problem. If someone has a light bulb moment, they can kind of work out the problem and what they were thinking when they solved it, and then make those notes and those thoughts available to other students who are struggling with the same problem.
I could really see something like this with your emerging scientists with your make projects. I would love to have somebody sort of do a diary of what they were doing as they were processing it.
Yeah, I think there's really, we do a maker's notebook, there's a print thing that, getting kids to keep lab notes is really a useful thing. And, it's actually easier to draw and do things. And I think drawing is another one of those entries into making, getting an idea from your head and saying, here's what it looks like. It has, a big one of these and a little one of these. And, you start iterating over that. So being able to capture it from print and then share it online would be, a real asset.
Okay, and we'll open up for some questions.
Questions from the audience. Just raise your hand, please.
Some over
wait
on
till
this
I
side.
wait till you with the mic. Please introduce yourself and where you're from, and keep your questions short. Thank you.
I'm Alice Flores, and I'm from Cal State, Monterey Bay. I'm a colleague of John Ittelson, and I'm a teacher trainer. And we're looking at using animation as a vehicle for not only assessment but learning. And we have some schools that have already started using animation, but it's very costly. They need to have lots of hardware and software in order to do it. And when you showed me that pen, you're very lucky that I didn't just run up there and sit right next to you and start talking with you. Because the second language learner and our special needs students who have to have it more than one time, right, this would be very convenient because it's taking what teachers are already doing and giving them that support. So I do want to meet with you later, and I do want to talk to you more because we are going to train our teachers for the 21st century in using these kinds of things to provide education to the students in the K-8 realm, which will just keep going and building as they go into higher ed.
Okay. Question right next.
So I have no question.
Oh, okay.
But I
want to just tell you I was impressed.
Thank you.
Okay, do try to put a question mark at the end of it. Thank you, Alice.
Hello, I'm William Sneed from Grossmont College in San Diego. Following up on what she was saying, does it matter with the Livescribe what they put on the paper? In other words, let's say a developmentally disabled person is using that and they make a symbol. Sure. They're still going to get all the information that you present it?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, yeah, you could write a kanji.
Are they going to still get it?
Right.
Good for you.
Right. It doesn't matter what ink you put on the page. You could draw a kanji character. You could draw a smiley face. It basically captures that ink, and the audio is synchronized with it. So one of the things we could talk about afterwards also is augmentative assistive communication devices. Kids who have verbal disfluency could actually create customized sheets. And you know Stephen Hawking, how he has that board where he touches it and it speaks? You could create one on a piece of paper in about 10 minutes. You just write down the words you want, record it, and the person with the pen could just tap on it and it would speak for them. So it doesn't matter what you write on the paper.
Hi, Laird Popkin from Kaplan. Also a question about the Livescribe. I was wondering about searchability. Do you guys do voice or text recognition?
Yeah.
For referencing later?
Right, and part of my demo that I decided to kind of cut down on is when you import your notes into the Livescribe desktop, you can search on anything you've written. So if I type in the word Vandy, any page where that word Vandy is written pops up and it's highlighted. And I just say, which one of those do I want to listen to, and I just click on it. So you can absolutely search on text. Handwritten text is found by typing in the word. Yeah.
Another question back here.
Good morning, Denise Spiro from West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm in a private school, 3-year-old through 8th grade. This is the teacher question in me, so it's fabulous. You know, your students with the dyslexia.
Right.
If the teacher reprimands a child, is it going to be recorded on there?
Yes.
Great question.
Yeah, you know, the thing is that there are questions about the use of digital audio recorders. You know, Livescribe did invent the digital audio recorder. I think we're just trying to make it more accessible for information. So I just use it as a tool, or I think of it as a tool for anything else. When I give tests, I ask my students to sit far apart from each other. I ask them to put away all their electronic devices. You know, this would be something where if I was doing a lecture and it was on a sensitive topic, I didn't want to record it, I'd just say put them away. But most of the time I would provide it. So I just think we need to be careful and judicious with our use of technologies.
Okay, Bobby, I have a question over there.
Coming.
Going to have to run.
That's why I wore my tracksuits.
Hi there, thanks. My name's Scott Traylor. I'm the CEO and founder of a children's software company called 360 Kid out of Boston. And thank you for asking that question. I had two questions, and one was about the confidentiality using Livescribe. But two, I'm also curious in terms of Maker. You know, I'm not very familiar with Arduino boards. I know they're very popular, and people in the Maker community rave about them. I know toy inventors rave about them, and I'm curious, I've heard of some other boards too. I'm wondering if it's just a US thing versus a European thing. Pickaxe, Pico, are those competing products? Are they the same products?
Well, they're all different. They're different microcontrollers. So Arduino is an open source platform with a great community. Pickaxe and others are, Pickaxe tends to be centered in the UK. And there's you know, some variations, but you know, at the end of the day, it's a small computer that you can program to do interesting things with sensors and outputs. So the platforms can be slightly different, more expensive or less expensive, but the pressure in the open source community is to keep everything really inexpensive, and I think that's where it's benefiting education potentially.
We're going to take one last question.
Yeah, my name's Ed Madison. I'm a CS and IT professor at West Point, and I was wondering if Maker has done anything with taking the kits and projects and quantifying kind of like the learning objectives, lesson objectives kind of things, so that you could take a project that has Arduino and a couple other things in it and say, I know I could fit it into this exact curriculum. You know, I could put this in this particular course.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of defining the educational context for some of the projects we have. Actually just got a DARPA grant in the fall to establish the practices of making in up to 1,000 high schools over 4 years. And it's really it gives us some funding to do exactly that, to help. So kind of, there's so many great resources online. It's just sort of connecting them together so they make sense. But we have a lot of our projects online already in something called Make Projects, and there's Instructables, and there's lots of places where you can get a lot of projects. It's the art of teaching them and using them in small groups with kids, I think, is a body of practice we're still developing.
Okay,
actually, I was at West Point. They did some some great projects there. Yeah.
Okay, although my wife said that's the last question, I'll reserve the last question here. A question in terms of the open source community. We've talked about the open educational access. I think there's something unique about the maker community in terms of openness. And is there something that the higher education community can learn from the community spirit that you developed in the make community?
Absolutely. I mean, I've given talks. I mean, it's a whole thing about sharing. That I think the default. When we think of inventors in the past, perhaps we've often thought of people who secret away their inventions and keep them to themselves and afraid someone's going to take them. And what we've seen in the make community is that the default is sharing. You could do that, keep it to yourself, but people are gaining momentum, gaining opportunity by sharing. So I think that fundamental idea needs to be a greater part of education to really get things out of just an educational context, out into a community context. So the kids that are doing robotics aren't just looking at their teacher as a resource, but looking at people around the world that can help them learn what they need to know and even celebrate what they're able to do.
Okay, I'd like to give a round of applause to our backpack panel here. It's a pretty exciting backpack, so I hope that if you have kids, you make sure they're doing their homework, and if you haven't attended a Make Fair, it is a life-changing experience, and I would kill if somebody took my Livescribe pin from me. So now we're going to try to do a group activity here. Part of it is making sure that we get the room cleaned up and ready for lunch. So without further ado, thank you.